Payload. Same crew as always, though. It's me. My name's Connor Knutson. Goopy Kanoopy, you might know me as. And then we have the boss man, as always, to this side of me over here. It's opposite on Discord. Robert Haynes, who I would say your tag, but I don't really know what it is.
I don't have one.
Okay.
In video games, I normally go by the name Sorensen.
Yeah, I've seen that. I saw that on your old Draft Buff profile. That's what's that about?
Yeah, it actually comes partially from which, by the way, Fire Emblem Three Houses is getting released tomorrow on Switch.
Nice.
My sister is going to get it, and I'm going to play it with her pretty much all day tomorrow. So
nice, fair.
Pretty pumped about that. Great games, by the way. If you've never played them, but yeah, it's based off of a character named Soren, and or I think it's Sorensen.
Okay.
With an S-O-N, and he's like this master tactician. And I always found him to be really cool, and I felt that I've always been more of a strategy kind of a guy than like a skill kind of guy. So
nice, dude.
It fit. So maybe I need to start using it more.
No, I like it though. It's cool. Dope. Well, the reason I asked my favorite philosopher is Soren Kierkegaard, so Sorensen.
Sounds
like it ties in. Hey. So could mean a whole variety of things. Philosopher, tactician, same thing.
I am the philosopher tactician.
Of course. And we're bringing the philosophy tactics today on Escorting the Payload. If you guys are coming here for the first time, either on our YouTube channel or on Twitch, we are the only and the premier Overwatch League betting show. Number one in the world, because there's no competition yet, and because we're the best, obviously. But what we do on the show is we talk about, usually we debrief a few games. We called it Point A, Point B, Point C. Point A being like an easy game to bet on, safe odds, good lines. Point B being a game where you could reasonably take an underdog in a pretty tight matchup and get a good payoff out of it. And then point C being what we would call like an upset pick, a game that we think you should take because either the lines were built poorly or we just think it's a good game to call an upset on. And we're gonna be possibly making some slight changes to the show, TBD. As you guys know, we've been using Draft Buff for kind of half the show for our fantasy aspect of it. There were some pretty serious flaws in the system for the latter half of the season going into the stage playoffs that made it really hard to build a team and kind of use the platform properly. So I think Draft Buff is working on those issues now, and they're actually down currently for Overwatch. So we will not be doing a fantasy element of this episode, but stay tuned for future episodes. We'll probably be doing something in that regard. But we'll see, It's ebbing and flowing here on Escorting the Payload. We're just going with the flow. So, big news going into this Stage 4, though, Rob. We have the 2-2-2 roll lock coming in. And this is going to make the lines pretty unpredictable, right?
I think that's what we're seeing on BetDSI already, the other site that we use. It's been pretty consistent, honestly, and I think their lines have been pretty good. Whenever you hear us talking about, okay, here's a good line to take, here's not one so great, we think BetDSI has been doing a relatively good job for what I would expect to be their limited knowledge. And they only got 2 days planned out because I think that they just have no idea what's going to happen because, it's not likely that a San Francisco or Vancouver or a Shanghai or a Hangzhou are going to just drop to the very bottom of the league.
Right.
But there is opportunity for teams like Washington, like Toronto, right, to make some moves, even Paris, to make some moves towards playoffs. The only two teams are technically out are Washington and Florida.
I think so.
So
something like that.
Everybody else has a chance at least,
right.
And so I think with the lines, they're just waiting to kind of see. They've got some preliminary lines.
Yeah. First 2 days.
That you could take. We'll talk a little bit about them,
yeah.
But even the lines that they have here are way closer. Like we used to have it where it was like a minus 5,000,
for
right?
Vancouver.
Where they were just never going to do it. Whereas Vancouver's first game this time, they're tied basically with San Francisco. They're both at a minus. This is the first time I've ever seen the Titans at a minus.
That's very true.
It is, or not a minus, this close to a plus.
Yeah, just lower number,
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
And that's kind of what goes into a lot of this because BetDSI hasn't yet put out all 4 days. We're going to go through our point A, point B, point C. It's going to be a little less formal than it typically is because we just don't have the numbers for so many of these games. So we're basically just going to put you on notice for games to be looking out for and to check in on BetDSI when those lines do come out. We'll potentially tweet those out as well if we see any that are just outrageous. But I'm going to take you into what I think my point A is first. This is a super interesting game that I think when the lines do come out, it's going to be a huge long shot. That is actually, I am thinking point C right now. I am absolutely thinking the wrong point. I can quickly find my point A, though, now that I'm actually thinking about you go ahead, because I was actually totally wrong. If everyone doesn't know, we were starting late because I was at the grocery store when we were supposed to start our show. So
I wasn't going to call you out.
So, yikes, first of all. So, my bad. Clearly frazzled today. So, Rob, you can go ahead and just talk more and help us out here.
Yeah, I got you. I think one of the games that people are going to expect to be a lot closer, but one that should kind of go one way is going to be the Gladiators and the Outlaws. Well, I think the Outlaws are going to improve a lot. I do think the Gladiators have a much better shot of winning, and I do think because of their performance last stage, and depending on their performance in their first game against Paris today, I could see them going into Saturday, putting Houston as the favorite and making the Gladiators as the underdogs. And I think that that's a huge mistake. I could very easily see the Gladiators being a nice bet to get some quick money on. Again, 2-2-2 roll lock changes everything. We're going to see a combination of Jake, Linkser, and Dante for Houston, and that's terrifying. I mean, that's a really good team. If you want your hit scans, you're going Dante and Linkser. If you're cool with running the Jake Rat, you're going to go Jake Rat and Dante again, more than likely. I think that Dante is going to be pretty consistent, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I'm pretty excited for that game, and I think it's one that you can definitely make some money off of once the line actually comes out, and that would be my point A.
Yeah. Also, I'm going to interrupt you because there's breaking news currently. The Overwatch League has released their 2019 season playoffs primer, and it's looking like Sigma will be playable in the playoffs.
They're going to add him during the playoffs?
Yes. I felt like this was important enough to bring up during our show because that's pretty radical. And someone in chat dropped in there. Thank you for dropping in. And there's also going to be a play-in tournament, and they announced the dates for all of that.
Make sure you go check it out for that. That's good.
Yeah, it's in chat. Go check it out, and then they have it all. They have the prize money, all that up there. So shortly after our episode ends, I will be writing about that, I'm sure. So,
and we'll have Watch House tonight on right after us. So
they'll be talking
definitely
about
be going over it.
Yes,
so
most
follow
definitely.
Brad and the crew. I don't know who else is on with him tonight,
But kind of getting back on track. Thank you for dropping that in chat, though. It's very huge news. It's funny you say that, Rob. I actually think I have Houston picked to win that game. I still think it's a good bet for the Gladiators based on the odds, and they're likely going to be favored, at least in most analysts' minds, if not on the lines. But it would be a good bet. I think that a really safe bet and one that might the lines could be a little skewed would be London and Dallas. Dallas is a team that's has I think 10 wins already, 10 and 11 I think is where they're at. And they're really bad. I think they are in the bottom three teams in the league right now, performance-wise. I don't think that 2-2-2 is going to help them either. I think it's actually going to make them worse. And London is the team I see 2-2-2 helping the most, actually. So besides maybe Philadelphia, you can make a case for, or New York, because they have so many DPS. But I don't know that the lines makers will know what to do with that game because their records are so similar, and we're in a new meta, so they might give Dallas a little bit of forgiveness there.
Right now, it's skewed pretty hard towards London.
Oh, really? That one's already up, isn't it?
It's at a minus 294, which is the second highest minus.
But even a minus 294 isn't outrageous. Like that's not.
It's not. It's pretty safe, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, you could still throw $10 down and make 6 or something like that.
So that one to me just jumped out right away as a game where. When I'm picking games this week, that's going to be one of the quickest games I pick, and it's against a team with an almost even 500 record. So, as far as lines go, that one should be pretty favorable for a point A, I would say.
Absolutely, I think that there's one. I guess if we're heading into
let's go
a point B, that's a little bit of a risk, but still, I think one that you can look at. Seoul at plus 223 versus San Francisco. I know Seoul has lost some stuff. They've lost Fissure and they've lost Munchkin, but I actually think that means that they're closing in on their starting 6. and that they've been starting them more and that they're ready for a 2-2-2.
Could be.
And when Fleda's back, Fleda's one of the best Widowmakers in the entire league. He's been popping heads for 2 years now.
Yeah.
And I think that between that, Ryu Jae Hong's going to probably be, back in that starting lineup. You might see Toby a little bit. Like, they're going to have something out there, and I don't think they're going to be as easy for San Francisco as we think. I think San Francisco is going to be strong, but I still think they're going to be figuring out their DPS situation because they have so many good players. And I think that is going to be a bit of an issue, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And so I can totally see Seoul at least going toe-to-toe and making it close. And I think a point B bet, something that's not going to be really outstretched, is definitely something to look at. So actually, quick update as well before you comment. The Houston Outlaws just went more favorable against Paris Eternal, I think by almost 85 points.
Wow.
So Paris Eternal game at plus 133. If you're feeling Paris, might not be too much of a stretch there either. But so that's I think that's a pretty solid game for you to bet on in the middle portion without fearing to lose too much, but could be a nice game for you.
What's the line? I don't have BetDSI pulled up, sorry. What's the line on the Charge Fusion game on today?
It's favored towards the Charge, so the Fusion's another good one because that's plus 112. So,
that one is pretty striking. Those are two teams, so the reason this one's tough, and I can see why they're favoring the Charge, is the Charge do just get two huge pickups in Fraggy and Bishu. They're a team that has really good DPS talent, and their supports are solid. Like, Shu is amazing on the off support or flex support role. But I just see Fusion being so good in the 2-2-2 meta, even though they've looked kind of like scrambled all season. You're getting EQO and Carpe back on heroes that they are made their names for. EQO is considered one of the best Western DPS, and Carpe is considered one of the best Korean DPS, and they're on the same team. So in a meta where that role is going to shine, I really see them doing well. So, even though they're considered an underdog, I think you can make a case to bet for the Fusion on that pretty easily. But I could also see a reason to bet for the Charge. So that should be a great game regardless, if we're just talking about an entertaining game to watch. I would definitely tune into that one. I'm going to jump into my point C real quick because I'm feeling pretty good about this one. This is what I talked to you about earlier, Rob. So I actually think if we fast forward to Saturday, I would be curious when they come out the lines for this, how much of an underdog the Atlanta Reign are versus the Hangzhou Spark.
Okay.
So with Hangzhou right now, you have the situation with Crystal where there's some miscommunication where he leaves and stays past his extended allotted time home with no contact to the team. They kind of roast him on social media for it. And then he responds by saying, like, no one told me about the rules. It's a really awful PR look for them. And what that also means is they're bringing in No Smite and Bazzi, I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name. But so it looks like if they're bringing in No Smite and Bazzi that they're going to go for a full Korean 6 to start, which would mean no Gushue. And without Gushue and Crystal, I just don't know that the Spark are as good of a team as they certainly have been lately. So I don't know how good Atlanta's going to be in the 2-2-2 either. It's a tough one to call. They have players who are really good in each role, and I think they are almost more of a 2-2-2 team than they are a GOATS team. So I would, if you're going to go for an upset pick, you've got a team with some scrambled stuff going on right now who's going to be playing players that aren't as good. I would definitely bet on the team going against that team, which is this case the Reign. So, there's some other upsets you could take and go for, but this is one that I've had my eye on in our official Watch House pick'ems. I have Atlanta picked in everything. I think that Atlanta really does have a good shot to pull an upset this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably one of the best picks out there, honestly, because it's even with this 2-2-2, it's still going to be pretty clear who's better and who's not. That being said, my point C is going to be taking who I expect to be the underdog, Paris Eternal, over the Valiant.
Wow.
Here's the thing. I think the Valiant are clearly a good team, and I will eat my words for saying that I didn't think they were going to do as well in the playoffs. And that's fine. I mean, but I think 2-2-2, I think Kate's kind of convinced me that, like, that DPS lineup is not as bad as I thought it was going to
Pretty
be.
good.
And I think that when you combine all the pieces of Paris, they could surprise some people.
Yeah.
And I just don't know that I trust the Valiant yet without goats or without some variant of goats being available to them. And I think that somebody like Fact Fiction or Shax, like, I mean, who's going to be playing, right? Like, who's going to be playing? Is Space going to be playing again? You know, like, are they going to potentially use McGravy since they've, brought him in? I doubt it, but, you never know. And we don't know what their lineup is going to look like with 222 Roadblock. I think we have zero idea. Whereas with Paris, I feel like we're going to be pretty confident that they're going to stick with the lineup that they put out, whatever it may be in their first game. And you'll get to see somebody like Soon, who struggled all year, go back into what he is really, really good at. So I think Paris is going to be my point C. It's still a risk, no doubt. And they'll probably be the underdogs going into Saturday's games. But I can very much see that being a game where Paris surprises the Valiant.
Yeah, and this is coming from Sideshow and Bren and Mr. X in their show Plat Chat, but there's been some reports that May is going to be a very figurative character in the upcoming meta, and then the overall meta is going to look like Double Sniper and Dive. Multiple people have confirmed that. I think Halo tweeted something out about that as well. So what that tells me is that if you're looking at Dive, I mean, you've got Shadowburn, who's an excellent Genji, and then you've got Soon, probably playing like Tracer or something maybe. But if you have double sniper, you can put Soon on Widow and like Shadowburn or someone on Hanzo. I think that's a really good DPS core. Nothing taking away from KSF or Shax or anyone on the Valiant. I think the Valiant are better in the tank line and arguably better in the support line than Paris. But I think this meta is going to be very defined by DPS play, and people are going to almost be shocked to go back to playing this way. So I agree. I think that's a good pick.
Thanks.
So, yeah, like I said, there's a lot. I just dropped an article in chat. We're going to get to that here in a second. But there's a lot of interesting bets you could take this week. What I would caution, and because the line makers haven't even put the lines out, you don't really have an option, but I would wait until pretty close to the match starts. Get as much data as you can. Maybe make a bet on Sunday.
Know who's even going to start.
Yeah.
Wait to know who's going to even start, because we have no idea.
Very true.
And they haven't even announced starting lineups, and you won't know. So, I mean, some people may, like, reveal it through Twitter or something, but, like...
Yeah.
Like, we don't know. Are Fraggy and Bishu even going to start this week for the charge?
Yeah,
like,
it's true.
If they do, are they even going to be good?
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions going in, which is... I mean, this is going to be the most fun Overwatch we've probably seen in a while.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When they make the frag videos for 2019, they will all be from Stage 4.
There will be maybe 3 of 20 from the rest of the season.
And they'll all be Stage 1 when the Diva Bombs were a thing. But, yeah, so just keep an eye on that. Maybe try and bet on Saturday and Sunday's games, like after Friday. That way you have some data. You can kind of see which teams are doing good. Like if a team plays twice, maybe bet on that team on their second game, either for or against them based on their first game's performance. Just give yourself all the resources you can when betting. These Thursday, Friday games are a huge risk. If you see a line that you think is pretty tantalizing and you want to go for it, you can do it. Just know that we have it's the Wild West. We have absolutely no idea what's coming. So
we'll know better next week, and we'll have Draft Buff back, which we'll be very excited for. With their new changes and stuff too. So
and that kind of usually we dedicate half the show to talking about lines, half of it talking about fantasy. I kind of want to have our fantasy talk this week be a more zoomed out. I wrote an article yesterday for the site that I kind of want to use as a framework to talk about some stuff. So recently, we have the 222 rollout coming through. And then in the same week, we have Overwatch unveiling what they're calling League Picks, which is a beta version of a client on Twitch where you do pick'ems for each of the games, and you get Overwatch League tokens based on how many games you get right. Which is, it seems like it's just a silly, fun little game. I think that's great, and you can just view it as that. But it's also Blizzard's first foray into fantasy of any kind, where you get a reward, like you actually do get something back that you can spend in game, which is huge. So then you have that, plus you have Captain Planet. I think his name is Ben Troutman for the Overwatch League website, comes up with a player impact rating system, PIR, and it's effectively, in his mind, a way of measuring players up against one another that is patch and meta-proof, and it was representative of like a whole, like you're able to compare players of different roles and their impact on team fights. So basically the fact that because the problem with fantasy Overwatch is the use of stats is so flimsy. You're always going to pick a Zenyatta because their healing and damage output is way higher, whereas like Reinhardt is shielding half the match, so he's not getting any damage, but he's still valuable. So you're never going to pick a Reinhardt over like a Diva or Zarya. So there's a lot of issues inherently with balancing Overwatch fantasy, but this number, in theory at least, should be the first thing that is able to truly like set players up against one another with a score. So my question in the article and my question to you, Rob, and to chat is, should we suspect that these three things, 222, the PIR, and league picks, are Overwatch League's kind of first steps or a message that for 2020 we will see an official Overwatch League fantasy game?
I'm going to say 2.5 of them are.
Okay.
Okay, as weird as that sounds.
It's fine.
I think the pick'ems is absolutely the first step, and it's something they'll probably keep track of this stage, probably keep track of it next year, and they'll probably give rewards for people who get perfect weekends, and if somebody gets a perfect season, like, it's pretty unlikely, but it's possible. I think 222 roll lock, absolutely. I think it's the easiest way to do fantasy, because otherwise it was just off flex. Nobody knew what the hell they were doing.
Yeah.
Like, this kind of also solidifies starting lineups, which is something that Overwatch needs to a certain degree. Like, you want to be able to have people who can shift in and out, but having starting lineups really helps with fantasy, because when you have somebody like Soul who you just have no idea what's going on. I will add to that before I get to my half here that for fantasy and for gambling specifically, a lot of the time, and people don't know this, like the MLB and hockey, well, not hockey, but like a lot of places are expected to reveal their starting lineups ahead of time, at least an hour or two before the game, for the lines and for betting and whatnot. So I wouldn't be surprised to see if the Overwatch League starts making them announce their lineups.
Yeah.
League of Legends kind of does this unintentionally. I think it's partially for fantasy, or will be, to give you a better idea of who to start and who not to start. Because it's really frustrating, right, when you're 5 minutes beforehand and you got to go change your lineup.
Oh, yeah.
Or you don't even get to because they don't announce that somebody's out for the day or something like that.
Yeah, and we had this happen on Draft Buff with Shax and Space. It was a huge... I mean, they were worth very different amounts, and one of us picked, like, I think I picked Shax and you had Space, and it's just a coin flip, and that it shouldn't be that way. We should know who's playing. So
exactly. And the thing is and I understand that it potentially gives the other team time to figure stuff out, but like if they really are able to figure it out in an hour, then like good for them. Like, that means that they were way more prepared than they should have been, probably. But for my half, I don't think PIR is going to be used at all.
Really?
For fantasy. At all, because it's not really a number thing, right? Like, I know it gives you a number, but it's not like you can't base your fantasy team based off of a number like that. It would be like using, I think the best example for this, and the reason why they probably made this stat, was for WAR in baseball, which is wins above replacement, which shows how good a player would be or is compared to somebody who may be starting below them. Right, or the average MLB player. I forget exactly what it is, but the whole thought process behind that is to show who is the best, right? Who's the best at doing a multitude of different things. Like, there's so many different statistics in baseball thrown into it. It's not just RBIs and hits. It's home runs, doubles, triples, strikes. Looking at walks taken, all this stuff. There's just a whole bunch of different things, and this sounds like the first foray into that. And I think that that's a really important statistic for the Overwatch League to have, because not only does it give us as journalists a ton to write about. I mean, God, we could dissect these numbers inside and out for days. But more importantly, I think that it gives people an understanding, like you were talking about, of players like Haxel, right? Everybody's talked about how Haxel is so good. Like, even I've heard the broadcast was good. This guy doesn't get enough credit. Well, how are fans supposed to know that if the cameras aren't on him all the time, because he's not doing something that's all that important, right? So while Brig was very important, she was so boring to watch.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we're going to stick with the main tank, and we're going to stick with the Zarya, and maybe we'll look at a Zenyatta, but otherwise we're just going to, do a scope out, and you're never going to see the break.
Yeah.
But what it showed is that Haxel really has been the driving force for the Titans when they were in 3-3-3 or in 3-3. Like, he clearly was doing what he needed to do. By the way, super big snub. He should absolutely have been in the MVP race.
It's ridiculous.
Neither here nor there.
Go ahead. No, keep going.
Oh, no, you go.
No,
you go.
I was going to make a totally aside comment about MVP voting.
Oh, okay.
So.
Okay, well, to end my point here, I don't think that PIR is a good way to really do fantasy, because fantasy is all about stats, right? Whether it was in League of Legends, MLB, it's all on the base stats. Like, MLB is not even, like, they don't have war in there. Like, they don't have advanced statistics because it's too nebulous almost in a way.
Yeah.
And way too complicated for the average fan. So It's a lot easier to draft somebody based off of how many walks are they going to have, how many hits are they going to have. For what they'll probably do next year is how much damage are they outputting, how many final kills are they getting, how many team kills are they getting, how much damage are they getting, how many actual assists and not team kills are they getting. Like, there's just going to be a lot of different things that is really important.
So I think that that's where I disagree with you. So to me, like, the PIR is a really simple number. So to me, you could do it like the PIR plus final blows minus deaths could be like all you do. Because what the thing I'd be worried about is if they do an Overwatch League fantasy with all the numbers in effect, like damage, like all the things you just listed off. We're still just gonna pick. You're gonna pick all the Zenyatas as soon as you can. Like, those will go the first 20 picks of the draft, and then you'll take there are certain roles and certain heroes that are just inherently going to be better at that than others.
But Zenyatta may not be in the
right, and that's very true. That's very true.
And I think also you got to remember, like, there are things like you always pick running backs when you can in the beginning of an NFL draft or in an MLB draft. You're going to pick outfielders and first baseman and third baseman over catchers, shortstops, and second baseman, right? So, like, I don't see that as being a problem. You don't want numbers that are not even really truly understood by the people who've made them yet. Like, they're going to make changes to that number because it's based off a bunch of other numbers.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with a damage or with whatever they end up using, they need to make it based off of just the one thing that it is.
Yeah.
I think if you have too many things combined, like, even if it was like two things, that's fine. But this number that they've came up with is also based on things like whether a hero is actually viable in the meta. Who decides that? Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's such an
it's pretty subjective,
open-ended question.
Yeah.
There's no real set thing, and if you allow your fantasy to be based off of that, like, you could also have a week where, let's say, the PIR totally changes because the meta changes, right, in the middle of it, which they've said they're going to do.
Yeah.
And then what? Jonak is totally useless because Zenyatta doesn't exist anymore.
So I think what the numbers and I agree with what you're saying. I think this is a good point. I think what the number at least does in my mind is it gives players, regardless of role or what hero they play, still a chance to make an impact on team fights and still get good numbers, like get good points. Because, like, Prophet on Tracer in the grand finals last year, so like he may not have gotten the most damage or kills, but his impact on the match was paramount, and his PIR in that match was like 150 or something.
But that's not what fantasy is about.
That's true.
Fantasy is about numbers. It's not based on how good somebody was on the side. Just because somebody makes a great play in the outfield, and it's like Billy Hamilton for baseball, for example, is going to save a ton of runs because he can dive and do all these crazy things, right? Like, that's great, but it doesn't matter for fantasy.
Yeah, that's true. So, and this is where, High Noon and Draft Buff have pretty simple systems where they just do, like, damage, healing, or pluses, like plus 0.5 per damage done or per healing done, plus 5 points per kill, and minus 3 points per death. That's pretty simple, and that covers it pretty well. So that might be what it looks like. Just an interesting discussion. I'd love you guys to jump on the piece. It's on Reddit. You can contact me on Twitter. We'd love to talk with you more on the show. Unfortunately, we have already started late, and we're at our max time, so we do need to wrap things up. We will be back next week. to talk more fantasy. We'll have a better sense of what 222 is like. So until then, good luck betting. Thank you so much for stopping by, Rob. Thank you for being the co-host that I don't deserve as always. And thank you all for being patient, bearing with us. We will see you all next week. Peace.